By the end of the 24th century, Earth was no longer blue. The clouds, once white, had turned into acidic stains beneath a permanently grey sky. Oceans were poisoned, forests fossilized, cities encapsulated under survival domes. Hope no longer lay in the soil, it lay beyond it. That's when the Icarus project was born, not as an escape, but as a final act of faith. The boldest scientists, the most desperate governments, and the most insane visionaries united for an unprecedented feat. Colonized Saturn's moons, a gas giant, surrounded by frozen worlds long considered uninhabitable. But through gravitational engineering, inverted core terraforming, and fourth-generation AI, the impossible would become real. Titan, with its dense methane atmosphere, was the first. Enceladus, with its underground oceans, revealed resources beyond water. Dione, the smallest and most overlooked, became the ideal haven for isolated research. In just over 2 decades, the first permanent colonies were born. Massive domes anchored in ice, subterranean cities with artificial sunlight, orbital stations dancing around the planet's golden rings. What was once cosmic poetry had become concrete. But every victory comes at a cost, and every new world forges a new humanity. The first children born on Saturnian soil didn't seem different at first. Small, fragile, human, but there was something strange, a subtle detail. They took longer to speak. They stared at the sky, as if recognizing something the adults could not see. Their eyes didn't blink neither at light nor darkness. At first, it was called evolutionary adaptation, then genetic mutation. But the real question was yet to come. What if those children weren't just adapting to the new environment, but responding to an ancestral call, a call that didn't come from Earth, but from the eternal storms of Saturn? They began to hear before they could speak. At first, the colony's doctors attributed the signals to neurological disorders, symptoms of the artificial environment, or even side effects from radiation filtered through Saturn's domes. But soon it became clear. The children were reacting to something the adults couldn't detect, a pattern, a frequency. A presence. It was as if the planet was whispering to them, not with words, but with emotions condensed into sound, a deep hum that intensified during Saturn's storms. Faint voices vibrating through the metallic structures of the colonies. An echo only those born there could perceive. They didn't just hear, they understood. Some began drawing symbols on the walls. Others wrote in unknown languages they had never learned. There were children who awoke at night in a trance, pointing at the sky specifically, at the yellowish blur of the great hexagonal storm, Saturn's North Pole. And then came the shared dreams, almost identical reports from children who had never met, dreams of floating cities within clouds, entities made of light and energy calling to them not by name, but by tone, tones that vibrated inside their chests, as if each child had a secret note within them. A key. Scientists tried to investigate. They recorded speech, mapped mental images with brain-scanning AI, but none of it made sense except one thing. Saturn was not silent. Within its gaseous turbulence, there was order disguised as chaos. Within the silence of its clouds, a message, encoded, and these children were the first human antennas to decode it. But if they were receiving ... who was sending, and why? When Elara, the first child born on Enceladus, turned 12, she underwent a routine neural scan. The analysis revealed something alarming. Synaptic patterns unlike any known human structure. It was as if her mind had been designed to process a parallel or worse, pre-existing reality. The images she projected during induced sleep left scientists speechless. Ruins orbiting a core of light, fractal codes embedded in Titan's rock, formations, immaterial beings touching Saturn's inner layers, as if trying to awaken a sleeping colossus. None of it came from human culture. None of it had been inserted via educational programs, and yet, she remembered. As if Saturn was not being discovered, but recognized other children began showing the same behavior. They spoke to crystalline trees in recreational simulations, recited hymns in frequencies that resonated with exploration ship sensors, and one of them, Kale, born under a polar aurora on Dione, looked at his tutor and asked, "Why do you pretend you don't remember?" The phrase was recorded, analyzed, archived, a spontaneous anomaly, but at that moment, the most disturbing suspicion in the history of Saturn's colonization emerged. What if these children weren't just mutations? What if they were receivers or worse, replicas of a greater consciousness, scattered across generations, and now awakening in human form? The children born of Saturn weren't just listening to the planet was remembering them. And that memory was anything but passive. The Enceladus scientific base functioned like a metallic heart, buried beneath kilometers of crystalline ice. Sensors pierced the layers below the colony, mapping cracks, thermal flows, gravitational anomalies. But during one of those scans, something was detected, a pulse. It wasn't geological, not seismic. It pulsed like a heartbeat. At first, it was blamed on mining equipment interference. But the pulse persisted, always at the same interval, as if something beneath the crust. Was awakening. ELARA was the first to react. During a solar radiation storm, communications failed for several hours. The colonist children were taken to an underground shelter. Inside, Elara separated from the group and sat in silence, eyes fixed on the metal ceiling. "It's calling," she whispered. The few working sensors captured a low resonance beneath the base, as if the planet were trying to speak through her, a frequency too low for humans, too high for machines, perfect. Only for them. The ice beneath the station changed color. For a few seconds, it glowed in ethereal shades: blue, amber, violet, and then faded. The scientific team tried to explain. The military team tried to contain. But the children, they just watched, as if they understood it was part of something far greater. In the station's records room, a phrase appeared on the local AI monitor, written without command, without source, without author. The heart of Saturn never stopped. It was only waiting for its children to return. And then, the pulse grew stronger. The message wasn't sent by radio, nor by satellite, nor through any known protocol. It simply appeared on engineers' screens, in patrol ship interfaces, even in the cybernetic implants of security officers. Always the same sequence of symbols. Not letters, not numbers. Forms. Impossible geometries, curves that folded in on themselves, axes that defied 3 dimensions. Initially, the colonies AR tried to decode them. It failed. But the children did in single quotes ELARA, Dren, Isha. They all began to draw the same patterns in their sleep, as if their subconscious responded to something their conscious minds could not understand. When questioned, their answers were vague, but eerily consistent. It's not meant to be understood. It's meant to be remembered. The Titan base activated its security protocols. Enceladus entered isolation, and communication with Dione ceased completely. One by one, the colonies realized this was not a malfunction. It was a summons, like an ancient drum echoing through the void, calling its scattered children back to the core of what they once were, back to something that had been there long before humanity ever dreamed of the stars. Governments tried to shut down transmissions, to power everything off, but it was too late. One of the children, just 6 years old, walked to the center of the command dome and, without touching anything, manually activated an emergency protocol that no one had ever known existed. A new message appeared on every screen. "We are close to remembering what we are." And in that instant, the sky of Saturn shone with a color that had never existed before. The atmosphere of Saturn had always been a spectacle, waves of cloud dancing of his film of liquid gold, hiding storms capable of swallowing entire worlds. But that night, it spoke, not with sound, but with resonance. Studies detected a shift in the planet's electromagnetic field. A rhythmic, repetitive pattern like a heartbeat, but deeper, older. It was as if Saturn had a pulse, and it had awakened. The stations received the signals, but it was the Saturn-born who felt them. Alara fell into a trance before an orbital window. Her eyes reflected golden light, and when she finally spoke, her voice was no longer human. He is listening to us. And now ... he is answering. They didn't know who he was, but the symbols returned, this time drawn in midair, as if the gravity of the planet was beginning to affect more than matter, ideas, consciousness, forgotten memories. The adults tried to intervene. They sedated the children, isolated the labs, but the influence ... had already spread. A drone sent to the edge of the upper clouds captured something impossible. Structures, symmetrical, organized, towers made of suspended energy, formations that hadn't been there days before. And amidst the eternal storm, something moved, not in haste, but with purpose. It was as if a city were emerging, slowly, in rhythm with the planet's own consciousness. While governments debated closing the colonies and evacuating civilians, the Saturn-born whispered among themselves, ever more synchronized, like a living neural network. They knew the planet wasn't a place. It was a being. And for the first time in eons, it was awakening. They didn't dream like us. The Saturn-born entered a kind of sleep that didn't resemble rest, but communication. In recent weeks, all colony-born youths fell into deep sleep at the exact same time. No exceptions. The same minute, the same duration, 23 minutes and 9 seconds. When they awoke, they drew thousands of symbols, none repeated, yet all connected like puzzle pieces from a mind unbound by human limits. The shapes resembled orbits, gravitational flows, and the map of an organism. Saturn, not as a planet, but as a living entity, with a circulatory system, memory zones, regions sensitive to emotional presence. The scientists were divided. Some saw genius, others a threat, but the dreams didn't stop. A boy named Idran began speaking in a language that had never been catalogued. The colony's linguistic AI tried to decode it, and the result was unsettling. It wasn't a spoken language. It was intentional, based on patterns of thought and vibrational resonance. "They don't want to destroy us," Idran said, in a vacant voice. "They want us to remember what we were." Then came the first reports of adults having visions, memories that weren't theirs, sensations of floating beneath liquid oceans, images of cities made of crystal and gas, like echoes of another life. The barriers between species, time, and matter were beginning to break, and Saturn, or whatever lived within it, was awakening in us. What we were before we were human. The question was no longer what to do about the Saturn-born, but what to do about what we're becoming. Colony sensors on Enceladus detected a pattern from inside Saturn, not a conventional signal. It didn't behave like radio waves or magnetic pulses. It was more like a biological rhythm, like a heart. Beating. With every cycle, the pulse aligned with the children's sleep patterns. And soon, it began to affect adults. In Lavi 9, an engineer named Thorin collapsed after staring at Saturn's electromagnetic readings for hours. He muttered deliriously, "It's not a planet. It's a vessel, a receptacle of memory. And it's waking up." That same day, exploration drones sent to the upper atmosphere were pulled into an invisible gravitational current. 3 vanished, 1 returned, but not with data, with images, fragments of an internal structure. Impossible columns floating amidst the storm, geometry in constant mutation, adapting to the consciousness of the observer. As if the planet itself revealed its form only to those ready to see. And those who saw never returned the same. In the Dione colony, a psychiatrist named Merrill reported something once thought impossible: planted memories. People recalling lives they never lived, families dissolving, children calling out for ancient names. No one recognized. Something deep, ancient, vast was interfering. but not with violence. With a RECO and an ECTION. Saturn didn't want to destroy. It wanted to call back, like a heart recognizing its scattered children. But what would happen when all were awake, when all heard the call at once? And above all, what would we become if we answered? In the silence of Titan's observation dome, a young girl, Kale, one of the firstborn, beneath Saturn's amber sky began to write, not on paper, not with words, but with light. Her fingers drew glowing lines in the air, visible for a few seconds before fading, codes, sequences no colony translator could decipher, but they activated dormant sensors in monitoring satellites, as if the planet understood. The cryptography team, radial language, a form of communication that transmitted not just data, but intention, memory, condensed emotion. When Kale finished her first sequence, something answered. Not with sound, with presence. Gravity shifted inside the dome for a few moments. The air vibrated. Emergency lights flickered on, mimicking a lost sunset. No one was harmed, but everyone felt it, an ancient weight, a call not from outside, but from within. The Saturn-born began drawing the same symbols simultaneously, though scattered across thousands of kilometers. It was a collective language, a fragmented mind, trying to remember itself through them. Human minds, now receivers of a cosmic echo. Saturn wasn't teaching, it was remembering itself through the children who had returned. And the most disturbing part, the symbols wouldn't stop expanding. With every new mark, deeper layers of consciousness awakened in those children. What are they becoming, and when? The language is complete. What or who will they be summoning? On the night the final sequence was completed, all transmissions ceased. Satellites went silent, drones disconnected, and the sky over Titan changed. Not with an explosion, but with an aurora that didn't match any known natural phenomenon. Liquid light, swirling in impossible spirals, as if space itself were breathing. At the center of Saturn's storm, an opening formed, a scar spinning slowly, revealing not a core. But an eye. Not physical, not biological, but conscious. The presence the Saturn-born had been channeling had awakened. It was not a god, not a machine. It was a living archive, made of stellar memory, an entity formed of all that was forgotten, buried, or exiled from the galaxy's early cycles. And now through the children's language, it spoke again. The message was clear and singular. You are our vectors, our continuity. You were not created, you were restored. Governments tried to intervene, tried to evacuate, but the Saturn-born refused to flee. They did not bow, they accepted. Kale, her eyes now glowing completely white, looked at the sky one last time as a human, and she smiled. Saturn was not a planet. It was an orbital code, a containment field for something that was never meant to be forgotten. And now it was free. Some say the colonies were disintegrated. Others believe they were carried into a dimension where time and biology no longer obey Earth's rules. But one thing is certain, the stars around Saturn have shown the same again. And sometimes, when the oldest sensors scan that region, they hear voices. Not pleading, not warning. Calling. As if they still wait for the rest of us.